All right, so we'll call the committee of the whole to order. Adoption of the agenda would be the first item. So moved. Second. Adoption, all those in favor? Motion's carried. No delegations or minutes. We have a departmental report from the Director of Finance on interim tariffs, reporting and offset purchases. So a motion to receive that report and provide direction.
So moved.
Second. On that, we'll just get that, and then all those in favor on that? And then I guess we should have some discussion and direction. Go ahead.
I'm wondering, in our report on the first line, it says that we're working towards carbon neutrality. What would we have to do to achieve carbon neutrality? How do you get there?
You have to purchase offsets.
Short of purchasing offsets, what could we do to not have to
Not
get
buy
to a
gas.
place where we don't have to pay?
But
Not by fuel or use hydro. It will
So there's no way then.
no, it's a matter of purchasing offsets, and I guess that's what staff are looking for direction. We had a bit of discussion around this at budget time, and certainly the report indicates some options there. Go ahead, Tom. Then.
Okay, well, there's a wide, we can pay $1.50 for a project in India, or we can pay $25 for the Pacific Carbon Trust. And I went on Pacific Carbon Trust website and saw some of the project that they spend their money on. And, they're helping the Marriott Hotel in Whistler system, and, the Fairmont Hotel in Whistler, too. And I'll be darned if I want to use our money for that. I would sooner
that we bought the cheapest offsets available on the market, which I think were $1.50 a ton, and then use whatever money we have left in the budget to reduce that 607 tons of carbon offsets that we need to buy. And hopefully we can find projects around town that we can use the money locally rather than going out. And hopefully next year we will only have to buy 500 tons of carbon offsets.
Okay. Patty.
So I'm just looking for clarification on the request that came from the CDRD. So are they indicating that A, we would buy our offsets at whatever value we choose, and should there be any monies remaining from what we budgeted, that they would like that, or how do you see what they're asking?
The way I read it is exactly that. They'd like us to invest in their energy efficiency projects. But the problem with that is that then they get the carbon reductions, and those carbon reductions effectively come back to us through the tax requisition. And we pay a small, we pay a third of most services, right? So we would invest, but other communities, particularly those with higher tax requisition, would receive most of the benefits.
A follow-up. So if we don't spend all the budgeted money, if we find enough value for our purchase, and we budgeted, say, what would we otherwise do with those remaining funds?
I believe that's the purpose of my memo. Just to ask the committee and council for direction.
I'm talking about the remaining funds that you want to...
In the normal course of events, if I've accrued an expenditure at $25 a ton, or at $25 per unit, right? If I've accrued $12,000 and the cost ends up coming in at $2,000, the other $10,000 would be reversed. So it would reduce our operating costs.
Yes, on page 22 with the Regional District Report, it talks about the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Programme, and it says it's a conditional grant that provides funding to signatories equivalent to 100% of the carbon taxes they pay directly. I mean, are we automatically eligible for those grants, or is it budget related, and would we... am I reading it wrongly?
Your Worship, we've been receiving those grants for 4 years. They are conditional grants. It's dependent on us doing an annual reporting to the public on CARIP, which is why the CARIP, the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program report, is attached to my memo, and it's also on our website. So we've got to report out publicly. As part of the Climate Action Charter, we've agreed to achieve carbon neutrality. We haven't said how we'll do that, but what every municipality that I'm aware of is doing is buying offsets.
But when it talks about the grants at 100% of what we pay...
That's the $12,000 in carbon tax that gets built into the cost of our fuel annually.
And there was just a couple of things. I mean, it was a great report. I just wondered whether we could add more to it. I noticed on the transportation, which was, page 10, there's things like we do Bike to Work Week, and I know a previous council restricted drive-throughs. And I just wondered, isn't there an anti-idling bylaw in Comox? I mean, I tell people parking my driveway there is, but maybe it's just...
We don't have an anti-idling bylaw. We have a policy that applies to the town and to town operations.
Okay, so we could add that into the report.
I think that's on page 11.
Page 10.
Page 11 says fleet, anti-idle policies for fleet vehicles. And purchasing of a hybrid.
Yeah, under transportation too, e.g. creating anti-idling policy for city vehicles and Bike to Work Week promotion.
Page 10 on 11. Ken, you're next.
Yeah, so if we were to follow Tom's idea, and I guess I'm asking this to staff in general, is there a project like the RD has their pool arena where they have that project where they could actually really reduce the carbon offset? I know we're building a new, we're looking at building a new works building, but is there something out there that we could take? We're going to have $10,000 to $14,000 left if we follow Tom's theory that we could use that would actually reduce that number in a significant way, in a reasonable way. I'm asking anybody who might know the answer.
In terms of the carbon tax calculation, calculating the number of tons of greenhouse gas that are produced, the vast majority of it comes from our diesel and gasoline purchases. So it's coming out of the fleet. Okay. In terms of natural gas, the building that uses the most is the rec center, and we've already put in a geothermal energy system to minimize that. The regional districts buildings, because they have pools and skating rinks, right, and you're either heating water up or cooling it down, are particularly energy-heavy users, and that's just typical of those operations. And we don't have any pools or skating rinks ourselves. So really, if we want to achieve massive changes to our carbon footprint, it has to be through the fleet.
Or going towards the sports aquatic centers, which we pay into.
Which we pay into, but that's not going to reflect on our numbers.
But it'll reflect on the budgets for those functions at the regional district.
Right.
Which we
pay a fraction of.
Proportion,
Yeah.
But it's still a benefit. Okay. Tom, you're next.
But hydro usage also counts against our...
Hydro usage does, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction. It's less than $1,000 of our, it's a very small portion of that.
Even all our streetlights?
Even all our streetlights, yeah. It's a few $100s worth of offsets.
Hey, Patty, and then the CEO.
Probably what would be helpful is, you gave us a report last August that I have here, and you've shown us where our tonnage came from. And it's really helpful for us.
I can provide you with the updated one in your mailboxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that.
CEO?
It would be, I think it would be a great idea to be able to reinvest whatever money we can say, save from not purchasing carbon offsets within the town fleet of buildings or vehicles first. And as the offset program develops, maybe there's other options.
Okay.
But there's perhaps some low-hanging fruit for the $10,000 or whatever money we may have that we can look at our buildings first and foremost. Yes, the reduction will be not as great as fuel purchase, but we do reinvest in our own infrastructure.
Yeah, well, that's what we're getting.
And so you've got some projects in mind?
I think we can
Okay.
look at some.
So at the bottom of this report on page 3, it just says that the committee can provide us some feedback on some of these parameters. We can provide some options for purchasing offsets in this report. So Is that sufficient feedback at this time? We don't need to necessarily pass resolutions to buy carbon offsets, but I think the direction seems to be pay as little as we can possibly on the market to buy the offsets and then invest the balance of funds. But you would bring back a report
Yes.
for the details. Yes, Barbara?
Yeah, and I'd certainly support that. I think in the future, when the blue carbon project becomes one that we can invest in, I would like to see
the
that
estuary.
we do that in the estuary, and it probably will come in at a higher level. But given that we can't and we don't have any local projects, I think, going for the lowest at this stage and reinvesting in the community is the wisest.
All right, so sufficient direction then on that. We've received a report and given some direction, and then staff will bring back a more detailed formal report in terms of what we're proposing we do. Anything further required? Okay. Alrighty, so we'll move on to the Ellis Comox Avenue sidewalk update report from the CAO and a recommendation. So we hear from CAO, or we can move the recommendation and discussion.
I'll move the recommendation, and then can we hear from them?
Yes. So
I'll
moved
second
and
that.
seconded and CAO.
What would you like to hear? We still think it's a good project, although it's higher than our budgeted amount. And as I mentioned in the report, we can still meet the budgeted amount of the project by removing the western Ellis Street sidewalk that's been proposed, although it does diminish some of the benefits we'd achieve by doing the whole thing.
And that's showing more detail on pages 28, 29. Yes. All right, so Barbara?
Yeah, well, I will be supporting the recommendation. I think the project sounds great. It's great to have all the details here. I know in the election that there was a lot of concern about that intersection, and I think that this will go a long way to deal with those safety issues on improved site traffic vehicular flow and improved pedestrian connectivity. And so I certainly think it's worth spending the money on it.
Okay. Yes, Patty?
So on page 26, again, it's mentioned that there, on item 3, that there's those ongoing complaints about that visibility for vehicles making a left turn onto Beaufort as they're heading west. So my concern is if we do this wonderful work, is there any chance we can go back and dig it up because we want to fix that intersection because it's not quite working right?
After we put in the left turn lane? Is that what you're saying?
So you, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you're putting a left turn in.
Yes. If you look on page 29, you'll see it.
I think that the dedicated left turn lane will, it should definitely improve and make it clear what the sight line is. And I think it takes out any unsurety as a vehicle. If you're trying to make that movement through the...
That's going to be, if I can, that's going to be a left turn from Ellis onto Beaufort, onto
Beaufort.
Beaufort onto Beaufort, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Heading towards the hospital.
Yeah.
Heading west.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Any further discussion? Assuming this gets approved, what is the time frame then to do this work?
Shelley?
Yeah, we can reward it immediately, and as resources and time permits, we'll let them get started on it. Yeah, and weather, obviously.
Okay. But it's a springtime project.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking if the weather is cooperating and they're ready to do the resources and they got the traffic plan in place, and yeah, we'll let them get started. It's not a sort of bus route or lots of pedestrians going to schools. Typically, we don't like to impact schools and usually wait for sort of summer months, but I don't see a big impact there. So
All right.
the sooner we can get going on it, probably the better.
Yes, indeed. Ken.
I was just wondering if when we do get a firm date on this, if we could send the construction plan to the BIA so that if we're going to have the road dug up or whatever the traffic flow is going to be, they always get a little concerned about traffic flow and not knowing that these projects are coming, so just some notification would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, anything further? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you, Scott.
Sure. I
yes.
have a conflict of interest on the next issue.
Oh, right.
Because I'm on the executive of that political party, so.
Right, thank you. Okay, so we have, I had a phone call the other day from our MP, and he is appearing next week at this committee. It was kind of hard to read it, but it is March 19th. And he is looking for support from our council, as well as other councils in the area, to object to the report, the final report of the commission. And it's the last kick at it. He has indicated to me verbally that he has the support of other MPs to the south and to the east, as in Powell River. And so he's looking for our support to essentially keep Comox and Courtenay together and let Powell River stay where they are now, which is West Vancouver, I think, Dryden. And so he's just looking for our support in that regard. And I told him that we had received the previous, the draft report, and didn't make any specific recommendations, but just thought that council may wish to make a further recommendation, or a recommendation. Yes?
Yeah, well, I'd like to move the recommendation, and it makes no sense to split Comox and Courtenay into two separate electoral areas, and it's a management issue that they've dealt with, and it bears no reality on the ground. So I think if you could send a strong letter of support for keeping Comox and Courtenay in the same electoral area.
So is there a seconder for that?
A second.
He also asked him as well whether that would bump it over the threshold for population. They're trying to keep it within, I think, 5 or 10% of 104,000. Like you said, no, it would be okay. So based on that, hopefully he'll get a favorable hearing with our letter of support and get fired off tomorrow. Yeah.
And just when we look at how many things that we do together, Comox and Courtenay, in our water system, and two primary things, the water system and the sewage system, to separate us when we're looking for grants, it's nonsense.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. All right, so anything further on that? All in favor? Motion's carried. You can bring Councillor Jack back. All right, so that is it for the agenda, other than we do have a camera meeting, so a motion to exclude the public would be required for that.
Second.
All in favor? We'll have a brief adjournment.